Hello and welcome to colleagues here in Sprint Review for 19.12.01. This will cover the work undertaken between the 26th of November to the 9th of December. Our sprint goal for this sprint has been to deliver the second phase of work to the lists functionality. This is to deliver the ability to share lists with other specified users or teams. Looking at the high-level items and to explain further, in this sprint, we've been able to deliver the option within list maintenance to share a list you've created within multiple users or teams. Shared lists will then appear in available list drop-downs advising who has shared the list. I'll give a demo on this shortly. We've added the ability to multi-select skills when adding or removing from a record. We've investigated and implemented a new timeout session handling. As it stands, the default length of a web app session is 20 minutes. That is to say that if a user does nothing for 20 minutes, it will time out and the connection will be ended. But previously, in the event of a timeout, it would result in an error message and broken workflow, whereas now it will warn you with a 60-second countdown leading up to timeout and then take you back to the login page in a controlled transaction. Previously, when you used the hide or remove options within a search result, this would result in the search results table taking you back to the beginning of the search. We've now resolved this so you remain where you are. Also, previously, when creating a new record, it was possible to go back to the creation page via the browser back button. We've now added the necessary measures to ensure the creation page is removed from the user's browser history as part of creating a record. So if you hit back, it will take you to wherever you were before you started creating a record. We began work on an email signature template. This allows you to assign a standardized template to a user record so that if you needed to make any changes to the company email signature, it would affect all assigned users. This work is still in progress and will be carried over to the next sprint. We've ensured that you can now remove more than one candidate at a time from a requirement. And the interview offer and placement selection screens now have a user setting so that you can default whether you want the resource by or arranged by user to be yourself or to view all, similar to the setting that's on the requirement selection screen. We'll now go through a brief demonstration on the key features from this sprint. Okay, so the first point to go through, and it was the main objective of the sprint, is the update that's been made to lists, and that's the ability to now share a list with a fellow user or several users, several teams, basically how you see fit really in terms of how you want to make a list available to other people. So when we added lists, it was known that that was going to be an obvious and required next step to it. This is basically a second phase of that work, essentially completing list management in its first instance in terms of its application. What then comes are the extra workflows that we tend to add over time going into next year. But in terms of how things are working, obviously from the lists option in navigation, you have the various different lists. Favorites will be the default unless you specified otherwise, and then you'll have obviously the option to select other lists that you may have created or have a view all option, and if you select view all, you'll get this list name column just to advise which lists obviously associated with the different records. In terms of sharing a list, if you go into list maintenance, what you'll see are the different lists that you have created, and then what you have, as you can see here, is a share section. So if we select a list, what you can do is navigate down and essentially select whoever you want to share this list with. So it's just essentially anyone within list. If you select a team, obviously it shares to all of the users within the team. If you select specific users, it's obviously just sharing with those users, and you just select whoever you want to share this list with, and then that list will appear. If we go back to lists, that list then appears as it does here. As you can see here, it says shared by, and then it will have the user that has shared the list with the other users. Once you have access to a shared list, it's the same as having access to any other list in truth. You have the ability to remove an item, to add an item. Essentially, you can continue to add records to the list. So it's as if the list is your own list, as well as it being shared. Again, we'll introduce further options over time to lock down various features if the demand is there for us to do that. So that's the list functionality and sharing lists with other users. The next point to cover is with regards to skills and the multi-selection of skills. So within any record that has a skills tab, previously if you wanted to either add or remove skills, you would need to do those one at a time. What you can now do is you can either select the parent to add all of the records as you could do previously, but what you can also now do is hold down Shift and select several records. You can hold down Control and you could select basically multiple skills from different skill parents, and they'll appear as they do there. One point to note is if you're holding down Control and you don't want to select the parents, you just select the arrow icon instead, and basically it ensures that the parent isn't highlighted. But what you can now do is basically highlight multiple skills and remove in one transaction. So basically just multi-selection of skills. And this has been applied to anywhere on the system where you have a skills tab. From an entity record perspective, where it hasn't been done yet is on the search when you're doing skill criteria. That will be done as part of the next sprint. The next point to cover is just with regards to the candidates against a requirement and how you can now remove multiple candidates if you wish to do so. So when on a requirement record off the candidates tab, what you can do is if you've shortlisted or longlisted candidates here that you don't want to progress with, what you can do is select those records and hit remove. Now, what was previously the case was that it would only let you remove one candidate at the time. What you can now do is select multiple. But there is this check, which is obviously looking to see whether or not the candidate has gone beyond the stages of long list or shortlist. Once it's gone into CV send and interview, at that point it's not something you can do in terms of removing the candidate, because obviously there is history with that candidate now against that record. In terms of how it will work, you'll run the workflow. The records that it removes will be advised there in terms of the numbers removed, but any ones that haven't failed to remove because they're beyond the long list shortlist stage will be listed beneath there. And if you want to see those removed candidates, as we're seeing them still here, you've just got this option to see removed candidates or show removed candidates. If you had that set to no, they would obviously be removed from view. So that's the ability now to remove multiple candidates from a requirement. The last point to cover is just on the interview, offer and placement selection screens, and it's this default setting with regards to whether or not you're by default searching on records associated to yourself or whether or not you're always doing it to view all. You've got a similar option against the requirement selection screen as well. So within, obviously for interview, it's arranged by, for offer, it's offered by, for placement, it's placed by, essentially what you've got is now within the user settings area, under, say, interview as example, you've got this option here of arranged by default on interview selection screen. If that's set to current user, then it will be set to your user when you're running that interview selection. But if you set that to view all, then when you're running the interview selection, what you'll see is that the range by will be default to view all. And the same to be said for offer with the offered by. If we switch that to offer, obviously you've got that option of current user or view all, and based on your selection will then dictate whether or not you are by default looking at offer all, offered by or view all. So it's the difference of whether or not you're doing it for yourself or whether or not day to day you're generally doing it to view other users' activity or other users' records. So there's just some default settings you've got there. As always, if you have any queries or feedback, please get in touch. I'll be keen to hear from you. Also, for those using Colleague 7, feel free to submit your enhancement requests via the support team or directly to me using the above email address. The next video will be the sprint plan for 19.12.02, and as always, that will contain a high-level overview on the items we intend to work on during that sprint. Thanks for watching.